Hello, amigos. So this week I learned about JavaScript events. Now there are two things that are infinite in this universe. One is the planet, and other are JavaScript events. There are lots of thousands of them. Mouse in, mouse out, mouse hover. I have a mouse. You need a mouse. Who needs a mouse? Everyone has a mouse. All these are JavaScript events. You name a random string, and I'm pretty sure you'll find a JavaScript event for it. So if we have so many JavaScript events already, the question is, why should we write a new custom JavaScript event? Well, I put to you, there are two use cases I can think of. The first is within your component, within your code, you can broadcast something to outside world with minimum amount of code. You really don't have to write classes and listeners and blah 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 to make this functionality work. Anytime you want to tell the rest of the world that something has gone in your code, some event has happened, you can broadcast it. And second, and personally to me, the more important thing is that you could add a custom data object to it. You can add any data you want to this event, and whosoever has subscribed to it, whosoever wants to read it, can read it. And that's a huge advantage, which is offered natively by JavaScript. Natively is the keyword that you don't have to write much code about it. Uh, to give you an example, think of a case where you have written a beautiful user information form wherein a user can type his email address, first name, last number, last name, phone number, blah, 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 everything. Everything is done and dusted. It's tested. You're about to go to production. And at the last moment, the security guy or the analytical guy, analytics team, they come to you and say, hey, no. Anytime somebody starts typing on your text boxes slash inputs, somebody presses some button or radio button, we need to know. The security or analytics team need to know. And most of the time, they will give you a big API, some godforsaken web service to call when this thing is happening in your form. It's a lot of work. Now, what you could do instead is to say, okay, I'm on board to it. Anytime somebody touches my inputs, I will raise an event and I'll give you all the data. It's an event. So, for example, the name could be user types in his email. It could be that. And anyone who wants to listen to that just listens to that event and he has the data. And to me, that is the most important functionality slash power given to us by JavaScript. And it's a minimal amount of code. I was really surprised how less the code was. So without me taking much time, let me take you to the demo and then we start writing the code. We will be creating two different demos to understand custom events in detail. The first is a small form component, which we will create and then call it from the app.css, app.jsx. The idea being that anytime if somebody is typing anything in a form component, like this is my input text, the moment the user hovers out of my input, I will broadcast an event to all the listeners who care to read the information, and I would send not only the timestamp, but I would also send some custom data. For example, in this case, I'm sending a value and whatever the user had typed. Similarly for email, this@this.com, and the value is received. As you can see from the message, it's getting received in the app.jsx file. That's through custom events. The second and the cooler implementation would be the polling of an API. It's a user API where you get some random user along with some metadata along for them, like image, first name, and last name. The idea being our component, which is let's call person component, it will keep on polling this API repeatedly, and as soon as it finds somebody from my city where I live, Brussels, it will poll it out. It will broadcast it to anyone. Hey, I found this user. These are the detail about it, and everything will be done via custom events. So in this video, it would be the form component. We'll go through the basic of it, and in the second, we will see how polling can be implemented along with the custom events. What we have over here is a simple create React app. Nothing new. I have just removed some of the stuff which I do not need, some files, and then printed a test. The first thing we will do is to create a form component with our input, and then step 2, add an event to it. So let's go ahead. I will create a new component folder over here. Let's go ahead and create a new form .jsx rfc. Great. Now, the first thing I would do is to add some input buttons to it, and the way I do it like this. Let's see it. What am I doing? I have some div class flex. I have already defined the class, the CSS for this in app.css. The code is already on GitHub, so you can have a look at it. It's type text, and on blur I say just call a function which is handle change. Let's do the same over here. Nothing out of blue. Let's go ahead and define our function, and it's this function that will be raising our custom JavaScript event. So let's go ahead and say const. Let's call the greatest programmer ever who lived in this planet, and that is called copy paste. That's my event. What do I want to do? Step 1, I would like to register a custom event. That's my Bluetooth going nuts. I have no idea why it does it sometimes like this. And sorry about that. Step 1, and then step 2 should be to dispatch it. That is a JavaScript terminology, but what it actually means is to raise it or broadcast it, whatever you would like to call it. So step 1, and this is the beauty of it. It's so damn simple. It's so damn simple. You can't believe it. So I'll say const event is new custom event. I give it a name. Normally you will define it in some kind of a constant file, but let's go ahead and say form event raised. Along with that, I need to provide a detail object, or an object with the detail property, which tells JavaScript, or to the listener, sorry, what the data is all about. So I would say detail is e dot target dot value, right? Perfecto, perfecto, perfecto. Once I do this, the second step I need to do is to raise this event, and I'll be doing that in a minute. The sooner I figure out one of my brackets. Yeah, it's this one. Voila. And here I would say just dispatch my event and print in the event object. That's all. Believe me, that's all I need to do to, to throw the event to the outside world. That's it, right? Now let's go ahead to app.css, app.jsx or JS, and over here I would like to tap that event and log it to the console, for example, right? So the way to do that is to use the useEffect hook in React. If you are in Angular, I'm sure there is some other way to tap into Windows events, or in plain JavaScript, you can just use window.event listener. It's pretty straightforward. So what do we need to do is, let's first import our useEffect here. Voila, voila, voila. I don't need all this. By the way, useEffect, it's all the side effects of a component. It's always preferred that we do it in useEffect hook and not directly into the function. Let me check it out. Quickly check some code. Yeah, let's do this. So what am I doing here? Oops. Let's paste it over here. What am I telling JavaScript? I'm saying, hey, whenever any form event raised kind of an event has been raised by JavaScript framework, listen to it and then call my raised event function. Now, this is the function which is in app.js. It's the receiving function, right? And then, of course, when the component dismounts, then just remove this event listener because you should not be listening. If the component is not alive, what's the point of listening to it? Let me quickly check if my event name was same. Yeah, it was the same. So what I should be able to do now is to say, let's go here and then say, listen to that event, that data that has arrived, and pick up the detail property out of it and just console log it, right? And this way I should be able to get my text. Just to recap what we did, I have some inputs. On the blur, I call my JavaScript function, which is handle change. I raise a custom event. Now, of course, if there are three more components, they could also have just said window.add event listener, form event raised, and then they would have got the same information again. It could also be, if you think about it, a substitute for your callback functions. Because at the end of the day, if from the parent side all you're interested from the sub children is some kind of a data, mostly we send a callback function and then the data comes back to us. Okay. Um, those kind of scenarios, the callback should be actually for some kind of an action, right? And not for simply data transfer. I think custom events are a far better approach to do that, or you could also use the React's context API. So that's the good thing about JavaScript. There's so many different ways to handle, to skin the cat, as British would say it. Um, Look at the ECEVIED, received. I get my spellings right. So that should be fine. Okay, this I don't care. Let's save it. Does it compile? Yes. Am I feeling? Oh, I need to, sorry, incorporate form. I forgot about that completely. It's a default export, so I should be able to do this, and then I should be able to type my form. Voila. If it saves, yes, it saves. Ah, look at this. There's something wrong with my CSS, but if I make it bigger, yeah, sometimes because I had set the width, but we all know about that. That's not a problem. So let's go ahead. So if I type something, I should be able to get my values over here on blur, of course, because that's the event I'm talking. This is my test. Look at this. I got the data back. This is my test, and this is received in app. Uh, cool. Email, of course, email also works. I don't need to show you again. But again, right now, this event is okay. It sends a text string, but I want more. What if I would like to add some timestamp if of the event or complete JavaScript object, complete JSON object along with that. So that functionality is also possible because the detail property of this custom event, it is an object. It can be an object. So, for example, to show you is to say, then let I would like to make it an object. So let's go ahead and do something like this. Right? So I'm saying detail is an object, actual object. So it has a value key, and I put in some value. And for timestamp, I have day, month, and year. And of course, in a real production system, you will probably use the JavaScript state object, or perhaps if you are interested in internationalization, then use moment.js. But for my demo, I would just go ahead with this. And the expected result should be that the event will bubble up to raised event, and then since I'm still printing just the detail, I should get the timestamp also. So let's go ahead and check it out. Remove this, da 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 da, go here, and now you can see it's an object. I have the value, I have the timestamp, and it's an immense. If you think about it, it's quite an immense uh, capability as a developer we have to transfer our data across, right? Another thing I would like to point out over here is that I had used, I was listening from my app.js. I'm listening to the event on window, right? Though it is raised on, the event is actually raised on the inputs. And the reason for that is this because the event always bubbles up. So if let's say a button click, the click of a button handle is executes first on the button itself, and then it keeps on moving up and up and up and up. So all the hierarchy can tap into that button click. It's a standard event functionality in JavaScript. It goes up and then it goes down. So the notification and then the execution. And that's the reason why we use e.prevent default, because if from the hierarchy upwards, we don't want to, let's say, let the event go up, then we can stop it from doing so. Um, should you want, you can also do it on events. So for example, over here, I could have said that okay, input.add event listener. So it will tap only when the event reaches that input, my input control. Or if input is inside a div, I could also say div.add event listener. That functionality is also possible. But of course, since if the basic idea is to really broadcast it to a larger audience, then you cannot assume that the input control in my form will be visible to external applications, right? Because input is my encapsulated in my form. So that's why I'm typing the window object over here. Cool. So I hope this was informative. I hope you got a bit of an idea of what custom events are and how super easy it is to raise them. In the next part of this demo, we will look into the person API and how we can broadcast any person who is living in my city. Keep watching. Thanks a lot. And if you like this video, please hit like, share, and subscribe. And I see you in the next part.